Ready graphics? Ready theme?
Good evening. For your information tonight.
Hi, I'm Jesi Mullins.
And I'm Lauren Milberger.
And this is FYI,
the Murphy Brown Podcast.
To thunderous applause.
It's a chef's kiss line.
Carl appreciates a good woman.
Yay, mullet guy?
Bye-bye shoulder pads, hello grunge.
Back to you, Jim.
And on today's episode,
we'll be talking about Season 2, Episode 12, The Strike. Hi, I'm Lauren.
And this is Jesi.
And welcome to another episode directed by Barnet Kellman.
Welcome. You know what I love about this episode? Looking at the details.
Uh-huh.
It feels very true classic Murphy in that it is directed by Barnet and written by Stephen Peterman and Gary Dontzig.
Yes.
It just feels truly Murphy.
And it's funny because I enjoyed this episode a lot more than I remember enjoying it originally.
I laughed so hard at this episode.
Yeah.
You don't know what section, but I always laugh at these episodes.
Yeah,
I was
same.
so surprised at how much I laughed at this episode. It got me. It got me good, y'all.
It did, and it's not one that I ever would have on my favorite, and I know a lot of people on the show have said that it's one of their favorites, Barnett particularly.
I completely forgot it.
Yeah, I did. I completely forgot it. I remember, actually, to be honest, I was like, oh, the strike episode. Okay, well. But I wonder if because it's a lot of adult issues that maybe as a kid you kind of just were like,
It just doesn't. And truly, I think also, one, being an adult, two, having been in film and on film sets, the on-set shenanigans that occur just hit me so much more from a place of like, it's too real and so slapstick, all this. Like, it truly is like adult arts and entertainment worker Jesi really appreciated this episode.
And also, as much of it is an ensemble episode, it's not our usual ensemble. You know,
Yes.
It's more Murphy and these union guys.
And Carl.
And Carl, and I love Carl, don't get me wrong. I love Carl. But it's not our usual sort of gang, even though everyone, I think, has a really important part to do. So, yeah, I came out going, I really like this episode. I didn't think I was going to like it going in from my memory, unfortunately.
Well, and something we've talked about, which ties into, there is another episode about a strike.
Yeah, it's called The Strike 2, I think. Strike 2, that's it.
Which is, I think, another reason why maybe I didn't remember this one as much, because I think my brain combined them as a child, which probably made it confusing and hard for me to remember it.
Yeah, I could see that. So Strike 2 is part of Season 3. So this episode is the end of 1989. So we're getting into the official 90s soon, which is going to be exciting, I think. Because, again, people refer to Murphy Brown as an 80s show because if you look at the dates, it started in 88. But I think of it as a 90s show, and it's so much part of 90s culture for me. It's sometimes a little strange to me, and I'll get a little upset. Like, no, it's not. It's not an 80s show. It's not. Little nerd brain in me. So this aired December 11th, 1989.
Bye-bye shoulder pads, hello grunge.
Yes. I found some really cool quotes from an article around this time from Diane and from Candice. And something that particularly Diane said was that the show to me now has more edges. And as I've grown older, I've grown more edges.
Oh, that's so good.
Isn't that great?
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, I think this is why as a kid, honestly, like stories about older people from me at the time, I should say, were more compelling to me. I was the only kid my age that didn't watch 90210. I had no interest in watching My So-Called Life. I didn't find teenagers interesting to me. I found people who were older than me because they had more of a story to tell and they had more edges, exactly. And I kind of I love that quote.
Well, and also I think that it has played into reasons that I'm not afraid to age.
Yeah,
is
good one.
And I think similar to like the Murder, She Wrote thing that we've talked about, which is that perhaps it's because I was raised by an older family, but also I was just raised by people who watched things where an older generation was not seen as less than or weaker. They were seen as having agency and empowerment in their own lives that continue on past, being like the babe in a law show. Like there's something about, I'm totally just referencing First Wives Club again, but it gave me a lot of perspective as a kid that I don't think I realized until I have been aging. Realizing that I'm not afraid of it. I'm not somebody who's trying to, I don't think my life ends at 50. I've never thought that. And I've always appreciated the fact that the older I get, the more edges I acquire. And that's always been interesting to me. And I think that's because of writers like Diane.
Yeah. I mean, I remember in high school, somehow it came up, a bunch of kids in class, what age do you consider old? And someone said 26.
Bless.
We were 17 at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't know, 60?
Like,
Which still today doesn't even feel that old. I mean,
exactly. I'm like, get it, girl.
60 is the new 40, really. Or 70 is the new 40.
I mean,
But also I found another quote in this article from Candice about working with Barnet, which I thought was really interesting. I needed virtually everything I could get from a director. All I had was the instinct that I thought I could do comedy. I needed someone who could help me to detail a performance. Barnet is remarkable. I don't know how he knows these things. That it would be funnier if I pick up the cup of coffee on the second syllable. His sense of comedy is so sure.
yeah, it's a gift. And we even noticed that talking to him, like just the way he speaks. Like timing is not something that you can learn. Some people just have it. And then there is a proficiency that someone can learn from example.
Yeah.
But just that natural inherent timing to just know that that's the funnier thing.
Yeah.
It's a gift.
And it can't be taught, but I think what Candice is saying is that she does have a sense of comedy. And so when you have a director who can point things out and also make you feel confident about your own choices, I always feel that the best director is someone who not only makes you feel confident about your choices, like I just said, but also makes you think that certain things that they want you to do is your idea.
Well, and I think that's what she doesn't realize that she said at that point was that she had the instinct already.
Absolutely.
Which is that timing. What you need is someone who's been using and honing that instinct for so long that they're able to articulate what that, like, I think about the directors that I work with who are so talented, and they never say, oh, I need you to do this and I need you to do this. They say, I saw your impulse to move at this moment. They see the impulses in you. They see that it's there. They just recognize it in you when you're not sure what your instinct is telling you to do.
Yeah, and someone like Candice who has a a great comedic instinct, when someone can say, oh, it's funnier if you pick up the cup here, she's going to remember that because she's going to understand why it's funny. She may not have thought of it at
right
first.
Instinctually in her body.
Yeah, and she'll keep doing it. I mean, you see her getting better and better.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's also something about comedic timing that's incredibly intimidating. The concept of somebody who has comedic timing. Like, we talk about it when we talk about the giants of comedy, and it seems like something that's so unattainable, and it scares a lot of people away from comedy. And that's why you need someone who's able to encourage you to keep going. I think about being in undergrad and a teacher telling me my freshman year that I have no comedic timing. And therefore, I was so scared of and avoiding, and I just avoided all comedy for years, which is what's so funny is that now I work almost exclusively in comedy.
Yes, that's so shocking to me that someone said that to you. But also, Rachel Brosnahan, who plays Mrs. Maisel, was also told that she was not funny.
Yeah.
So, you know
and the
what?
thing was, and I think what it came from, and now that I'm able to look back at teachers and authority figures as people with their own quirks and not necessarily perfect communicators,
Yes.
was that this person was noticing that I was trying to be funny rather than just being myself, which is a weird person who happens to have comedic timing. I thought it was something I had to try really hard at like 18. And similar to Rachel Brosnahan, she is just a funny human that when she, as we say in classical work, when you let the text do the work and just put yourself on top of it, it's funny.
So the song is If You Can Want by Smokey Robinson and the Miracles.
Oh, Smokey.
It's a 1968 single. It's on the Tamla label. And I'm going to use this opportunity to talk about Smokey Robinson. Obviously, I can't talk about everything here.
There's a bit of info.
There's a lot. But get this, Jesi. The great Smokey Robinson has been credited with writing at least 4,000 songs. Yes. Bob Dylan called him America's greatest living poet.
Oh, wow. From Dylan?
I know, right?
My God. That's like Renee Fleming being like, that girl is one of the best sopranos we've ever had in the world.
He claims that he had been writing songs since he was 4 or 5 years old. His birth name was William Robinson Jr., and he was born in 1940. And he grew up in Detroit. He actually grew up down the block from Aretha Franklin, so he's known her since since she was 5.
Wow, there's like magic in that water.
Oh, it gets even better. Also in the Detroit area were Diana Ross, Mary Wells, Jackie Wilson, and Martha Reeves. He said that there were so many talented people in the area where he grew up that they used to have group battles on the street corners. Like, I can't even imagine how.
Right?
I wonder if you were from that area and you just thought everyone was like that. Like, this is just everyone. Like,
Yeah, sure. Everyone just is talented.
So here's something I wanted to ask you, Jesi, because This is something that I was surprised about, that I thought I knew and I didn't. And we've talked about this on the show, things that you grew up with, things that you're told, and you just think that it's the truth and it ends up not being. Do you know, have you ever heard a story as to how he got the name Smokey?
Oh, I've definitely heard a name. I don't think I could even tell you. I definitely have read something or heard some anecdote about where Smokey came from, but I don't think
You don't remember. Okay, that's okay. I was just curious because I had heard, and this is wrong, but I had heard that it was because of these sort of blue-green smoky eyes that he has.
That sounds familiar to me.
Yeah. Also, apparently, which is not true, because of the light color of his skin. Absolutely not true.
Ooh,
yeah,
sinister.
I had not heard that one. So when I found out the real story, it's actually more interesting than his eyes, I think. So his mother was French, and his favorite uncle, who's also his godfather, Claude, would take him to see cowboy movies when he was a little kid. If anyone doesn't know, around the 40s and the 50s, cowboy movies and television shows were really, really popular. So he gave him a cowboy name, which was Smokey Joe.
Oh.
And he loved it so much that when he was a little kid, if anyone asked him his name, he'd say his name was Smokey Joe.
Oh, that's a good name.
So it just kind of became his name. And then when he was 12, he dropped the Joe. So his mother died when he was 10, and his sister had about 10 or 11 kids. So he really grew up with his nieces and nephews like they were siblings. So the Miracles were a band that he formed in high school. He actually graduated high school when he was 16.
Wow.
A month later from graduation, auditioned for Jackie Wilson's manager, who told them they had no talent and they would never make it. But in that audition was a man named Berry Gordy.
Oh, hey, that guy.
What's that song? And he said, I wrote that song. Oh, do you have any more songs? And Smokey brought out a notebook with about 100 songs in it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting is that Smokey says that he feels that Berry Gordy really taught him how to really, perfect songwriting, that he really didn't have it quite yet. He had all these songs, but there was something that really wasn't there. And that Berry actually only liked the one song out of the 100, but didn't tell him that he was bad, didn't tell him that he would never make it, but saw this talent in him. And I think that's a great example of feedback, right? This one guy was like, oh, those are horrible. Whereas somehow Berry Gordy saw potential in this genius, but didn't tell him, you know what, these are all bad. I only like this one, because that's not encouraging.
Yeah. Well, and also if you get one brilliant song, that's more than most people do.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Now, what's interesting, which I didn't know, was that the songs that Smokey wrote made them money is how they formed Motown.
Oh.
Yeah. So the money that they got from those songs that he helped him write, they sold, and then their first song with the Motown label, or the Tamla label, was Shop Around.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know why this got out of my consciousness, but technically they both started it. And then Berry Gordy actually was writing a bit, and then they kind of separated. So together they started Motown from the sales of this song. And he says that's his proudest moment of his life, is creating Motown at that point, which is really beautiful. So they sort of separated, right? Where Berry Gordy kind of became kind of running the business side of it and not writing songs. And then Smokey became kind of a talent scout, in-house producer, songwriter, obviously was singing as well, and eventually became the vice president of Motown Records until it was sold. Now, some of the songs that you may know from this amazing, prolific guy are You've Really Got a Hold on Me, I Second That Emotion, Tears of a Clown, Tracks of My Tears, as well as writing songs for Mary Wells, The Temptations, The Marvelettes, The Four Tops, and Marvin Gaye, who he was very close with and he really described as like his brother, which was really beautiful. Also songs that he wrote not for himself, The Way You Do the Thing You Do, My Girl, My Guy, Get Ready, You Beat Me to the Punch, You Really Got a Hold on Me, Ain't That Peculiar, which is one of my absolute all-time favorites. The Beatles were highly influenced by Smokey Robinson. There's an article from 1968 where he talks about his theory of writing. He says, my theory of writing is to write a song that has a complete idea and tells a story in the time allotted for the record. It really has to be something that really means something, not just a bunch of words on music. He actually married one of the Miracles, Claudette Rogers, in 1959. They've since separated and divorced. They had 2 kids, one named Barry after Berry Gordy, a son, and then a daughter named Tamla after the record label. He said that his favorite album of all time is actually Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. He feels that it's a prophecy. And he does not think he is a good singer.
Yeah, they never do.
He says, Whitney Houston, Celine Dion, Aretha Franklin, those are great singers. He says, I'm not in that category. I won't fool myself. This was what he said in 2018. Today, he lives in Pittsburgh, and he is in the wine business.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he's still touring. In 2016, he received the Library of Congress Gershwin Prize for Popular Music. As well as many Grammys, the Grammy Living Legend Award. He has an honorary doctorate from Howard University. He has the Kennedy Center honor and the National Medal of Arts Award from the President of the United States. And obviously, he was also inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the Songwriters Hall of Fame.
Like you do when you're Smokey Robinson.
There's so much to talk about Smokey, and that is obviously just a little abridged version of his life. But there would be no Motown without Berry Gordy, and there would be no Motown without Smokey Robinson, and I think popular music in general. Mm-hmm. What a genius of a man.
My God, it's 4,000.
And honestly, that's estimated.
Yeah. Well, especially if, as like an up and coming, he just had 100 ready to go. Oof. We're not worthy.
Let's get into the episode, which starts, during the song. I was going to say after the song, but it really starts during the song.
Yep.
Oh, we start with Murphy talking about Fidel Castro because there's a little picture of him behind her.
I read there are too many Fidel Castros in the background because every screen is Fidel Castro. Yeah, she is surrounded.
Oh, and the lovely Carl is in charge of her close-up, and he's enjoying himself. He's in love with that close-up of Murphy that he's doing. And he's like chewing gum kind of and like focusing. Like it's really good. Like you just know that he's in love. Like when you see people act looking at a phone when they get a text from like a loved one. Mm-hmm. But there's an important phone call. And what's great is that they have this sort of shot that starts with Carl and Murphy and then kind of goes like a circle around.
Well, rotating around makes me think it's not a traditional pan because that's usually just a linear horizontal.
Yeah, but I can't think of the term at the moment. But it does this great circle so that when the phone rings and then John answers it, and by the way, the phone doesn't ring, a red light goes on so that it's not going on during the broadcast. And apparently it's a very important phone call that everybody needs. They all sort of circle, including Jim and Corky and Frank, who should be on camera, or they're off camera, but should be on set. And so as the sort of pile of people become bigger and bigger around the phone, we circle and circle and circle it. It's really, really well done, and I love that. It's the great thing about these openings is that I think Barnet has mentioned this, that there's certain things that he can do that you wouldn't be able to do with just a regular 3 camera. Mm-hmm. So the song is playing, and then just as we're getting near the end of the song for this segment, everyone runs back to their seats, Jim, Corky, and Frank, and then we're out, and Murphy ends the broadcast. He throws it to Jim. Jim says goodnight, his usual, this has been another edition of FYI, and we're out, and Murphy is not happy.
Well, what I like is if you were watching them at the phone, the really smart way that Barnet and co, alongside the fact that it goes off with a red light, you don't hear the ringing, there's music playing. The smart way that they show that this is happening during broadcast is right in the background. You can see that Murphy's still talking.
Yes,
time.
Good point. Yeah.
So that's how you realize that they must be out of frame because she's still giving a report. We just can't hear it.
Murphy sarcastically thanks everyone for their undivided attention during her story. It's nice to know my colleagues, and then the phone rings and everyone scrambles. There's actually such a big laugh that it feels so sitcom-y. Mm-hmm. And she goes, appreciate my work. Candice does a great sort of side eye, which is those takes that I love that she does. Like she kind of looks off to the side, and it's like so particularly Murphy. So John answers the phone. Everyone's waited with, bated breath. It's the union. John tells Carl. So obviously Carl is the union rep since he needs to talk to the union. Frank asks, if they're going to be a strike or not. This scene is a great way of giving us exposition in the moment in a very realistic way because they're waiting for the phone call. So Frank's like, are you on strike or not? And of course, Carl gets put on hold. So they have to wait. And then we get this sort of back and forth information for more backstory.
I also love the fact that the way that it's set during the broadcast really ups the stake for the entire production.
Yeah, there's an urgency.
Like it really makes you realize how much. And like they say later, that this affects everyone. The fact that this is happening and it's distracting even the quote unquote cast from broadcast shows just how much this is going to directly affect the broadcast that we see later.
I also should mention, which I didn't mention, was that we have all of our crew members, including new people who are going to be talking soon, who we've never met before,
Dwayne.
and our usual extras.
Yep.
So a guy named Vito says that the union wants a strike, and they have this big sort of back and forth until Jim calms everyone down.
You know?
He wanted to stay neutral, but he goes to the same health club as the execs, and he thinks it looks good. But Frank is like, no. He heard from the hookers at the hotel where they're negotiating. It looks bad. It's just a lot of sort of one-upping, because Frank is like, well, I heard that it was a fist fight between the union and the higher up, so they blame the union. But then John is like, no, it wasn't one of our guys, it was one of them, and it wasn't a fight. He had a nervous breakdown. And Corky's like, no. She heard that it's food poisoning because someone left the ramaki out all night. And then again, they're all sort of talking on top of each other, and there's all this noise. And then all of a sudden, sort of to stop it, Corky just yells, "Who's touching me?"
Speaking of people thinking that they can touch women when they happen to be behind them, I would love to bring a little current relevancy to this conversation. Ooh. Speaking of reporters.
Yes, please.
So as many people who happen to be online in any capacity probably know, in Savannah, Georgia, a female reporter was covering what I believe is an annual, bridge run 5K style thing in Savannah, when, as they normally do, runners run by and they wave at the camera and they do their thing. And one adult male decided that this was his opportunity to strike her rear and cop a feel at the same time. If you haven't watched this video, watch it. Mm-hmm. The look on her face says it all. Yeah. It's been very interesting to watch the two sides argue about whether or not this woman and her company, which thankfully is behind her, not to make a pun, but who is thankfully supporting her, whether or not they're overreacting, which as a female who has been groped while reporting in previously, and as a female, it's not overreacting. And one of the things I love that she says in an interview, if you want to get something done, sometimes you have to be drastic about it. Yes. And that's why it's important that she's filed charges against this man. This man has been banned from all future races. There are many issues involved in this. I am, again, so thankful that her station is supporting her. Yes. I'm very glad that she spoke out, and I'm very glad that the community has banned him from races, that they appear to be taking this seriously. She was recently on several talk shows talking about it, explaining her position, also saying that she is not able to speak about further charges or the police action because she's letting them handle it, which again is also a very mature way to handle this. Also going up against people from the community and his own family saying, no, he's a good man. He's a family man. He teaches Sunday school and all, all these kinds of things. And it doesn't matter what those things are. He did something that was wrong. Yes. And she says this great quote where she goes, "It's not okay to help yourself to a woman's body just because you feel like it. It's not playful. He hurt me both physically and emotionally." Yeah. And that's it. It doesn't matter if you were a good person up to this point. You did something wrong. And I think something that frustrates me lately within, I don't want to use this phrase, but it's a buzzword. So cancel culture is the idea that holding someone accountable doesn't mean that we are not acknowledging that they have been a good person up to this point, and celebrating that somebody finally did something right is also not ignoring the fact that they did a bunch wrong prior. There has to be a way to acknowledge what has happened. And I think this person, he may be a really nice guy and everyone may like him. He also groped a woman in public, and the only reason that he is in trouble is because he did it in front of a camera. He should be held accountable. What I love is that other runners were clearly disgusted. So this is not it's just, I'm very happy that this woman has taken the steps she has and also put herself in the crosshairs of public opinion. Same, because like you said, it doesn't matter that he's a good person. He believed that this was a right thing for him to do, but also I think because the culture told him that it's a right thing to do. Exactly. I've been sharing this story on social media and talking about an incident that happened to me that still upsets me, and it happened a while ago. I was in a rehearsal and we were all sort of standing around to sign a paper. It was an improv rehearsal, and so I bent over to sign the paper, and everyone is, of course, watching because we're all waiting our turn. And I stand up and I get a hard slap in the back because he had been trying to slap me in the ass, but I stood up too quickly and I screamed because it really hurt and I was not expecting to be slapped in the back. And I had an idea of who it was just because of the kind of person he was, but I turned around and I asked who it was, and I was very upset. And I looked at everyone and no one would admit, and they all kind of, wouldn't look at me or were acting like I was making a big deal out of nothing. And I looked at the women and the women walked away from me.
I think that was what hurt the most, was that no one would stand up for me, but particularly the women didn't go, no, this is wrong. This is the person who did it, and made it seem like I was the person who did the bad thing.
It's the gaslighting of it in that scenario, the gaslighting of this woman. It's just the danger of boys will be boys cannot be overstated, because what happens is men will be men. And if you have one guy who's being told that it's okay to grope a woman in public and not face any consequences, that just multiplies. It just gets exponentially worse. And it's people who help themselves to women's bodies in worse ways, in more sinister ways. It's people need to be held accountable. I agree with you. I'm with you. I'm very sorry that happened.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry that what happened to you happened to you. You have a lot of people who are saying, oh, well, it's not as bad as this, but they don't understand that it just creates a culture that attributed to this, and I think far worse.
And I am intrigued in this episode that our new friend Dwayne,
which is
the
great,
one standing behind her and like raises his hands,
to be like, no, I'm not, and I believe Dwayne.
Yeah, I don't think at first I did, but the more we had of Dwayne in the episode, where I was like, oh, I don't think he did, because my first impression of him, from a stereotyping a large white male perspective, was that he was a gross lurker, because he tends to lurk over everyone because of his stature, and that it was a moment of gaslighting. It's so interesting. But, if I get to be stereotyped, so does Dwayne. However, I will say, after watching the episode, I don't think it was Dwayne. But the point is Dwayne should have called out whoever it was. In this one very light moment in a comedy that clearly at the time was not meant to be this like savage anti-feminist moment of groping a woman. However, in current relevance, important to say, don't touch Corky.
But we want to bring up, as we always do, context of today. So Murphy comes over because Murphy knows everything, and she just thinks they're all being ridiculous. Like, they should know from years of negotiating experience that they can never believe rumors. Besides, she knows for a fact. See, no, we're not supposed to believe other rumors, only rumors that Murphy hears.
Obviously. She is the journalist.
Yeah. Her source is very dependable, and they will not have a strike. And everyone grumbles, of course, Murphy, blah, blah, blah. They don't believe her. But Carl won't have it because he's under her spell. And he believes that if Murphy says there isn't going to be a strike, there isn't going to be a strike. And of course, in sitcom style, in that moment, he's off hold. And nope, of course, strike. Murphy was wrong. And what's great is that Murphy does another side take. She had this great confidence. I know what I'm talking about. And then, of course, we always know when that happens that Murphy's always wrong because it's funny. Now, apparently, Koppel was her source because she goes, wait till I get my hands on Koppel.
Oh, that was Koppel.
Yeah. Now, Jim lets everyone know that his head anchor, if there's anything that he can do, just let him know. And our guy, Dwayne, very deadpan, asks for $1,000 as he's hovering over Jim. Now, I've read this several different ways each time I watch it, but I think that Jim knows he's not kidding, but he's trying to pretend that he's kidding so he doesn't have to actually give him the money.
Jim has these beautiful moments of just bimbo that I'm not sure. I don't know. Because in the same way that like Miles at the end definitely knows that is definitely wary of Dwayne, I'm not sure Jim knows that he's joking.
Yeah, each time I've watched it, I've seen it differently. But I think the more interesting choice is that he knows that he's not kidding, and so he's pretending. I don't know, but he's definitely, everyone is a little bit fearful of Dwayne. That is for sure.
I'm just going to argue that I think the more interesting choice is that there is one person who is not fearful of Dwayne, and it's the one guy who might not be able to fight against him, which is Jim.
That's true.
There's something about the chin cuff that he does that is just like, dude, if you're actually aware to be maybe afraid of Dwayne, you would not.
Now we're going to go into another scene in the bullpen, but apparently we found out, thank you Corby, one of the writers from the show, who confirmed to us that they actually cut a secretary. It's not just cut from syndication, it was actually cut from the entire episode. A non-speaking secretary who's supposed to be like Norma Ray, which I think is pretty funny. And this is what it literally says in the script. It says, Secretary 27 is at her desk, drawing something on a piece of cardboard. She wears an open blouse over a halter top and resembles Sally Field and Norma Ray. And then it goes into the scene. At the end of the scene, I'll talk about the button to that joke. We're assuming it's probably the next day.
I do think it's a couple days into the strike because Corky starts it by saying she isn't sure if she could cross the picket line another day.
Right. Another day. Yeah. So it's probably a couple of days. Mm-hmm. She's wearing, Corky, this really striking pink blouse.
Yeah. And what I like is that it's a very kind of saturated hot pink blouse, but then she also has this like calmer pink, completely pink mug.
Yeah.
She's a vision in pink. I love it.
Murphy's wearing some of my favorite outfits, this sort of Colleen.
Yes.
A sort of Katharine Hepburn thing going. She has the white turtleneck. The hair is pulled back in this Katharine Hepburn way. She has this sort of tan suede sort of bomber jacket thing. She wears it a lot throughout the series. I just love it. These pants and belt. It's very casual, but also put together.
Yeah, her red turtleneck sweater that comes up later in the townhouse, I definitely wore that outfit the other day. So I felt very represented by Murphy in this episode. All right, so we find ourselves in the bullpen. We have figured out that it has been a couple days since the strike started because Corky is commenting that she isn't sure if she could cross that picket line another day. Apparently it brings back a lot of bad memories when she was in the pageants. She had to walk through protesters at the pageant calling it a meat market, to which Murphy just feigns shock that someone would say that.
I love she goes, "Oh, go on.
Oh, go on."
And she just smiles in that Murphy way. And Jim actually looks at her like, "Oh, go on."
No
Corky
way.
believes her. It's true.
It's true. Someone threw a pork chop at her. And then Faith does this amazing, just kind of a haunted read. That,
Corky is reliving the moment.
Oh, yes. She can still see that woman pulling it out of her purse, peeling off the freezer wrap, aiming, and then she like holds up her pink mug like it is the pork chop about to come at her.
Oh, it's great.
And Jim is sure that that's not going to happen. The protesters are their friends. The picket line is the crew. It's their friends. It's not going to happen. And of course, like good comedy, ding, the elevator arrives. And Frank walks himself off the elevator, holding his bomber jacket out in front of him, completely soaking wet. I do have to say, I was very happy to discover that it was water balloons because my first instinct was that they had thrown something else. I wasn't sure what it was, but I was very nervous about what he was wet from.
Oh, no.
There are so many things you can throw at a picket line.
I forgot it was water balloons. I knew that something happened. And because I don't think it's that much of a spoiler, but in Maisel, there's a character gets hit by a tomato.
Yep.
And so I was like, oh, it's going to be like tomatoes or something. And I was like, oh, no, that's right. It's water balloons.
Exactly. We'd just been talking about food. So I was like, what kind of watery food has he been doused in? I don't know. Anyway, someone asked what happens. It was water balloons. There must have been 100 of them. He is also reliving the trauma. And Miles says, no, it was no more than 7 or 8 tops. And Frank says, how would you know? You took off at the speed of light and left me there. Miles swears he didn't take off. He just saw someone he knew. And Frank said, yeah, someone named help me, help. It's a cashmere jacket.
Oh, Miles.
That is when our good old friend Eugene, or Gene Kinsella, returns. He enters the bullpen and he knows it's been a strain, but he wants everyone to know that the network is doing everything they possibly can. Now, as he's saying this, he is distracted to his left. And what I know was Frank's very soaked and disheveled appearance and this general kind of victim shivering that he's doing as if he's like in the middle of the winter and completely soaking wet. However, my first watch of this is that I thought he was actually distracted by Jim's very vibrant fish mug that he's holding. It was just the angle of Gene's look at I was like, is he distracted by oh, no, it's Frank. It's Frank.
Yeah. And Gene doesn't like Frank very much. He doesn't hold him in that high of respect.
Not
so I'm sure he's
Frank
just
fan.
Like, what is going on?
What is this little man doing? So he says the network is doing everything they possibly can to bring the strike to a swift and equitable conclusion. To which Murphy, our hero, calls him on that, saying that that's interesting because she knows that the network walked out on the negotiations, that the negotiations can't happen if they're not at the table. And Kinsella says a phrase that we hear later, which is that, well, they can't be the ones to come back to the table. It'd be taken as a sign of weakness. Murphy goes, oh, that she understands. And she offers to go get a ruler so they can measure it and settle it once and for all.
Oh, can I read the actual
please
line? Because this has become quite infamous. I believe we have stickers that we made of this line.
We sure did.
If you donate money to the podcast, we will send you a sticker
of this hero moment.
I think I'm beginning to see the real issue here. Why don't you guys just pull down your pants? I'll get a ruler and we'll settle this once and for all.
To thunderous applause, which I almost automatically did as well because it is exactly what's happening.
It's a chef's kiss line.
What I love is that Kinsella looks positively miffed. Because, Murphy's his friend. And Miles does this wonderful thing where he gets between them with his back to Kinsella and is holding Murphy's hand and patting it and making come on eyes at her.
It's like trying to hold a lion tiger or something. He's like, oh, come on, Murphy, and kind of pats her arms and then slowly makes it down to her hands and then takes the hands and holds it. Just like, please don't do this.
Please, we don't want to see anything we're going to regret. Just the patting of just please stop, please. And his eyes are just please stop. And Murphy announces to Jean that, she has an informant coming on the show. It's the informant from a major defense contractor. She's been waiting for months for this story, and this strike is endangering it going through. And you very much get the impression, and you find out in the next scene that this is a very scared whistleblower. This person is very jittery. It's been a lot to get them there. She doesn't want anything ruined in any way. Which, of course, the second that we figure out those stakes for her story, we know something's not going to go well.
No, it is not going to go well at all.
And Kinsella assures Brownie, I forgot that he calls her Brownie.
It's great.
That they have the best non-union crew they can find, and they're supplementing it with office personnel who have been given extensive emergency training. He says, I expect to see you all on the set tonight. Good. And remember, together we can end this strike.
I love that it ends that way. I literally wrote, ha ha. Really? We're all working together, Jean?
Sure, Jean.
We're not working together, Jean. So Jean leaves, and then the actual script, we have kind of the button to the secretary. Oh, Murphy, do you think you could control your secretary? Which is what Jean says to Murphy. So we turn and see Secretary 27 is standing on top of her desk, of course, holding a cardboard sign over her head that reads union. And Murphy just crosses to her and says, when your arms get tired, I've got some typing.
I love it.
Which I just love. So we cut to the studio, and it is chaos. It is complete chaos. Is the camera guy reading the directions?
I think so. Again, as we were promised, that the personnel is, they're going to have extensive emergency training. I believe that might be on the job.
Yes.
Emergency
and
training.
Also, I love that Jean mentioned that they were going to be using staff from the office because we recognize people. Mullet guy is there?
Oh, yeah.
I wrote, yay, mullet guy?
Go guy. Get it. It's a good old college try.
Now, Frank has to get out of the way of a ladder as he tries to figure out what's wrong with his toupee. It's on backwards, right? Is that what we're thinking? It's on backwards?
Yes. What I found very interesting I'm very positive it's on backwards. What I find interesting is, per all of our conversations about toupee and the conspiracy of toupee, they are making Frank wear the toupee.
Yeah. And also something that I completely forgot to mention when Corky won her award. Not only does he not wear the toupee to the event, it's not in the picture that they show of him on the screen.
Yeah.
He's not wearing his hair. So everybody knows he doesn't wear hair.
Yeah.
And yet he wears it.
I really like this thing is that he has to wear it for the network.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I just realized that Carl Reiner was known to not have hair and often would wear a toupee. But he's also an actor, so it makes it a little different. I don't know.
Yeah.
Conspiracy continues. So he can't figure out what's quite wrong with the toupee. He keeps asking everybody. I just wrote Jim enters exclamation point. I don't know why.
Wonderfully.
No, I know. Okay. So Jim enters and he's just really excited about the show. He really misses, I love how he says our crew.
I know.
Like he doesn't say the crew, he says our crew, which is really just shows how important everybody is to everyone on staff. It's not just in front of the camera. Jim. Yeah. But he thinks it's very exciting to do a live show with an untested crew.
I just like that Jim says it gets the old juices flowing.
Oh, that's right. Oh, Jim. Yeah, you would like that line, wouldn't you?
Yes. I almost said any time Jim talks about his juices, but that would have crossed into a very different conversation.
Yeah. I love how Frank says that he hates the toupee and one day he's just going to show up without it.
Right? Man, this really blows our conspiracies out of the water.
It does, but also I didn't realize that it's actually building a arc with him in the way for when he does actually get rid of it. Mm-hmm. Like it's actually goes, oh yeah, that comes from somewhere. It's not just out of nowhere that he burns it. You're like, yeah,
I love it.
I get it. He insecurely asks Corky how it looks, and she says he looks like her third cousin Russell, whose parents were brother and sister.
That was one of the only lines I wrote down from this section, partially because I was laughing so hard this entire segment that I wrote down very few things because I just could not stop laughing.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. And plus Faith is just like squinting at him like, you look like my third cousin Russell. His parents were brother and sister. So Murphy comes in and she's dressed what I think is a lovely bright salmon jacket. And she has
great.
Mr. X. She lets him know that the bustle around is perfectly normal. It's very smart of Murphy, like to know that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we already can tell that he's nervous. He's wearing a trench coat, a hat. He's looking around. He's wearing glasses. He asks where the exit doors are. And then she asks Miles to explain the tech that they're using to disguise his face, I guess to make him feel more comfortable. And the first part, you know, he describes like professional. And the second part where they're going to make him sound like a chipmunk, he sounds like he's 5 years old. Miles says that they have about 20 seconds to air, which of course I went, thank you 20. A little theater joke for any theater people out there.
20.
Thank you 20. And he's going to supervise from the booth, which is critical to what's going to happen. But also, we've never been to the booth before. Mm-hmm. We're in the booth. I don't know this tech guy's name in the show, but watching this now at such a critical, having to write everything down level, it's only his fault that everything goes wrong. Mm-hmm. The rest of the crew in the booth actually kind of probably know what they're doing. This guy is the missing link.
Oh, buddy.
Yeah. He can't figure out how the picture works, for one thing.
In a true, like, IT crowd moment.
Oh, yes.
Of, did you just try turning it off and back on again?
Yeah. Ends up it wasn't even on, which is why it wasn't working. So, Jesi, did you recognize something from the start of the show within a show that might be familiar to us?
It's funny. They started speaking and I suddenly felt like I was supposed to be speaking myself. It's like a thing that I hear. It's Pavlovian. I suddenly want to have an opinion and relevant insight.
It's the opening of our episode. It's the yay! Because it's the only time we really actually hear cue the theme, cue the graphics, and go. That's literally not what it says, even though I edited it a million times.
That's how... Listeners, that is how niche and obscure and specific our referential opening is for you.
Yeah. So before we start the episode, though, within the episode, Miles gives everyone a pep talk. Also, woman of color in the booth.
Yep, get it, girl.
Yeah. There's also a female camera operator, but I hate to point out the women because they're doing a bad job.
I know.
So thank you for the diversity.
But at least everyone's equally doing a bad job.
Yes, that's right.
That's equity.
It's like when something bad happens, my family will go, are they Jewish? Please don't be a woman. Please don't be a woman. Anyway, so I'm Bloomby. So we have cut graphics, cue theme, and the theme actually runs backwards, like a fast forward VCR. So already they've made a mistake. Mm-hmm. Miles assures them that it's going to be fine. It's the joy of live television. To which, again, missing link guy says, this is live?
Oh, buddy.
Now, Jesi, did you write down the stories? I feel like that's always your thing.
Oh, I didn't. I was laughing so hard at what happens next that I failed you in this segment.
No, that's okay. It's all right. Because I was like, oh, Jesi will know this. But I've done that. You were like, Lauren will do this line. I'm like, I didn't write that one down.
It's fine. This was my turn.
But I do remember that Corky's doing an interview with Tommy Toon.
Yes, I did.
I'm not sure if they'll be in the same frame together, but...
Yes.
So then the camera starts to go really low and Jim tries to follow it with like his face until finally they realize, I guess it looks like the camera operator fell asleep perhaps and has to bring the camera upright again after a lot of yelling. Then they're focusing on Frank when they should be focusing on Jim and then Murphy. So we catch Frank checking out the rug in the mirror. Oh. And then finally, we are on Murphy as she introduces her segment with Mr. X. And we get a wide shot and all seems to be well until the black dot that's covering Mr. X's face with his chipmunk voice starts to get bigger and bigger. And then the dot starts spreading towards Murphy and they're all blaming each other and they don't know what they're doing. And it's just like, I wrote, it's really all his fault. It's really all the one guy's fault.
This is the most simple and stupid joke. And I could not stop laughing. Like it changes shape. It becomes oblong. It covers both of their faces. It covers all of him. It is the Blob, but it's so stupidly funny. Like just whoever came up with this gag gets all of my high fives.
Also, Grant Shaud is so great at physical comedy. So to throw him in that booth and have him screaming, get off her, get off her. The dot is now on Murphy and Murphy sounds like a chipmunk. And then of course, moving the dot off of her actually does the opposite, and now the dot is off him. And no one knows this because no one is downstairs, doesn't seem to be a stage manager of any kind. And then Miles grabs someone's headset and just starts yelling into the mic to Murphy to hear, but there's so much static and feedback because it's so loud. She just like takes her earpiece and throws it out. So now she has no idea what's happening. At one point, Miles walks up to the television and starts slapping it to get Murphy's attention. Like she's going to hear him. He's like panicking.
Oh, it is true desperation.
Yes, I love when Miles panics. Mr. X is just whistleblowing left and right.
Oh, left and right. He is launching into everything that could have gone wrong.
He is spilling all the tea.
It's amazing.
The booth is bedlam. Finally, I think it's Frank, right? He moves the monitor.
Yeah, like wheels the monitor.
Frank wheels the monitor over to Murphy and she goes, whoa! And then tries to end the segment. Only Mr. X notices. He screams that he's going to be a dead man. Finally, the incompetent man says that he's fixed it and he pushes a button and it just makes Murphy turn into a chipmunk. But you see her face and she goes, back to you, Jim.
It's so good.
It is so good. But the best part, it's like we can't even explain it. Like I'll have to put a clip on social media for you guys to see it. But then Miles does his best Titanic impression before Titanic came out and just like puts his hand on the screen and like slowly like fades. And his whole body is actually like out of frame anyway. It's so
He's
hilarious.
Just sinking down. It's so good.
Yeah. And then we cut to.
So understandably, the crew needs a drink and we find ourselves at good old Phil's finally. Apparently, the crew is also a badass barbershop group.
Yes, apparently. And I can't remember the exact episode, guys, so I'm sure someone listening remembers. But in the later seasons, I'm pretty sure that he comes back again and does sort of a barbershop quartet thing. And so I was looking to see if he actually, did that in real life. And I can't find it, but I feel like I read that somewhere once. But particularly in his obituary, it said that he was a visual artist. He played harmonica, rhythm guitar in a number of bands. So he was very musical.
Do you know what song they're singing?
Yes, they are. Yes, I do.
Yes, they are.
They are singing Get a Job, which is a song originally by the Silhouettes, released in November 1957.
See, I knew you'd know. That's why I literally just wrote, what are they singing? Lauren. Like, I was in a hurry. I'm in rehearsal. What I love is that I wrote down, they look like the T-Birds from the movie of, or the Burger Shop Boys from the stage production of Grease.
I'm going to call them that from now on.
They have white FYI t-shirts that are crossed out in red circles with the cross through them.
I'm worried that they spent money on these shirts when they're not making any money, and they should probably use it for, I don't know, some kids' education, bonded teeth.
I could also believe that they just took their existing shirt and put red gaff tape on, like electrical tape.
That's true. And if I may say, there is a woman sitting at the table because the thing about this strike episode that may be a reason why maybe I didn't enjoy it as much as a kid, it is filled to the brim with testosterone. And there are not a lot of female characters on the crew or in the negotiation team. But there is a woman sitting at the table, and I want to think that she's part of the crew because she's wearing leather gloves without fingers. And I know that's not really like anything specific.
I mean, it's not a biker bar, so I'm going to go with, I think she's maybe like a grip or something.
Yeah, because all of them are a little more casually dressed than usually the patrons at Phil's are. So I was like, oh, a woman. Someone on the crew's a woman. Yay!
So they finish this wonderful song as the gang is entering. Phil comes around the bar to greet the gang, and they assume that he's very into the amount of patronage in his bar, as appears to be, because it appears the entire crew is now living at Phil's. Phil wants them gone. They've been there twice as long and spending half as much as normal. And he says if it keeps going, he'll have to cancel Phyllis's personal fitness trainer, just when she was beginning to look good in those Toreador pants again. And then Miles says, a usual for his team and a round for the strikers. And Phil looks at me and goes, burgers go really well with drinks. And Miles takes the bait and says, burgers for everyone. And Phil says, no dessert for them? And to which Miles goes, Phil, can I talk to you? And Phil stops and says, not now, Miles. I got $300 worth of burgers to make. Poor Miles. He wanted to do the good thing, and Phil just owned him. And Jim points out that, the damn strike hurts everyone. And Frank says, we could refuse to cross the line. That'll put him in action. And Miles says, yeah, legal action. You all have contracts that you have to be there, which is something we don't often talk about when it comes to strike conversations, is that, yeah, everyone's being pressured from all the sides. And so they're all sitting down at the hero table, and Corky comes up with, why don't we all just give some of our salary to the crew so that they get the raise they want? And they just pan to the gang, the horror on their faces at the idea of taking pay cuts to stop the strike. And at that moment, the crew comes over to thank the table for their burgers and to apologize for Frank about the water balloons. And Frank says it's fine. And then they all, you suddenly realize, have all surrounded behind Miles's chair. And they say they weren't aiming for Frank, and look at Miles. And that's when he realizes, looks up to the looming face of Dwayne and says, do you like ice cream, Dwayne? What's interesting in this moment is that they all start venting about complaints about the network that are the same complaints that Kinsella and the network have about them as negotiators, that they are impossible, that they won't come back to the table.
Where have we heard this before?
And Murphy stands up and points out, well, that someone has to make the first move. Someone has to come back to the table first. Yeah, John says, we can't move first. It'll be taken as a sign of weakness. Cough, cough. Where did we hear that before? Murphy decides she's going to be the one to make peace. If they're not going to come to the table, she'll do it, and that she's going to have everyone over to her place and make them talk to each other. Frank stands up and says he's not really sure that someone who tried to run down her mechanic over a billing dispute is the right one for the job.
I literally cackled out loud when Frank
It's so
said that.
true. Like, really? You're the one?
It is.
Candice does this little sing-song, like, all right, you'll see, and starts to walk over to Carl. Let's remember, Carl is our union rep. And proceeds to offer that he come over to her place. But Carl's not quite hearing the platonic offer that's being given to him.
I knew that was a mistake as soon as Murphy said it.
Carl, sweet Carl, stands so quickly, removes his hat from his head like a true gentleman and holds it to his heart and says, sweet Lord, my prayers have been answered. He's so earnest. She assures him it's not like that. She just wants to talk about the strike. I mean, there'll be cake, coffee, a little party. What's the harm? And Carl does this wonderful dramatic melodrama where he kind of touches her upper arm and moves her upstage and says, please don't make me do this, Murphy. Please don't make me choose between my union and you. And she says she would never do that. But she will wear those black pumps that he likes so much. And Carl clutches his hat in front of him and says, God forgive me, I'm putty in your hands.
I love the fact that a simple, sensible shoe turns Carl on.
Carl appreciates a good woman, like a true woman.
I was like, a pump?
Oh, yeah. Good pair of black pumps. That'll do a lot for a woman.
Yeah. Good for Carl.
Yeah. Carl has great taste. You know, that's all I'm going to say.
He doesn't need a spiked heel.
That's what I love. I love that Carl's in love with Murphy, not Corky. Not someone who's like young and hip and fashionable. He's about like an empowered, assured, adult, mature woman. Like a woman. I love it. Not a girl. He wants a woman.
No, I think, he definitely wants her to dominate him. That's for sure.
I'm just imagining Carl's dating profile on Tinder, and it is so sweet.
Aw. So we cut to the townhouse. And as previously mentioned, Murphy is dressed in a large red sweater. It is long. It is fabulous. It looks comfy.
It's stunning. It's a turtleneck. It can be worn with just leggings because it's so long. It's, I would say, to mid-thigh.
It's very in.
Yeah,
very in right now.
It's a bright red cable knit. I definitely own one that I purchased to do a cosplay of Red from Fraggle Rock.
Yes, of course you did. You must have looked so cute.
Adorable.
Oh my God. So what really caught my attention is that Murphy has a full-on classic tea service. Not maybe matching, but like an actual tea service. Not just like tea for everyone.
She's fancy.
It's a tea service. She totally fancy. Eldon comes from the den, which he calls the library. I don't think there's 2 rooms back there, but I forgive him for that. Avery very clearly called it the den last time, but you know, interchangeable words. He's letting her know that he's sanded the baseboards and it's decision time. She needs to pick a color and she needs to either go with Navajo white or eggshell, which is a very classic joke.
White or white.
Murphy does not have time for this. You know, people are about to arrive. She doesn't think they look any different. So she just tells him to pick a color. Eldon needs her to pick. Otherwise, she's not going to like it, you know, months from now. And every time she looks at it, she'll only remember her apathy, which I love.
He is savage when he wants to be.
He really is. Fine, you know, she picks eggshell, but Eldon thinks that she really wants to go with the Navajo. I have a question. Is this a little like racist to call it Navajo, right? Well, it is? Because I feel so uncomfortable saying it.
I'm going to go with it was not a person of native descent who came up with that color choice.
I'm going to guess, yes.
That name.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say that it's based on some stereotype of a white person's absorption of their culture or their art.
And I'm not in any way calling anyone on the show racist because it's a color.
It's legitimately like the colors that these things were named at the time.
I would not have thought about it back then either. I'm like, oh, that's just the color. But saying it now.
I'm not blaming the writers. I'm blaming the culture at the time.
Yes, no, and I knew you were. I just realized I want to be sure that everyone knows that's not what I'm saying. But interesting little things like this, right? That I'm like, I don't feel comfortable saying this. All right. So pretty much his Eldon thinks that she's made the wrong choice. So really, he did not want her to choose. He knew what he wanted her to take. And so finally, she's like, fine. Go with the color that you want. Because the doorbell rings and it is Carl looking quite dapper.
He's so gussied up with that lovely scarf.
He is. He's got a scarf and a newsboy hat. Oh, very, very in right now.
I get him.
And a nice little tweed jacket.
He's very special.
He's looking really good. He has brought her a gift. Oh, but first of all, he's not alone. John has come because John said that they don't trust Carl with her alone.
This is smart.
Is very, very smart. So they had to bring a neutral person from, their side there. Mm-hmm. Again, Carl has brought her a gift. It is a rose quartz, which he believes or is told stimulates the love impulses.
I'm just going to step in and say that rose quartz is actually connected in many cultures to love of all kinds.
Oh,
it is.
Really?
If you want to give yourself a symbol of self-love when you particularly need a bit more, you can buy at a bunch of different stores. You can just get a really affordable ring made of rose quartz. And it's recommended that you hold it while watching something that makes you feel a lot of love or thinking about how much you love yourself. And you wear that as a symbol of self-love. You can wear a necklace or anything like that. But rose quartz is a way to charge and embody different forms of love.
Do you know what I just flashed to that I had forgotten about? I used to have a rose quartz necklace in middle school when I would watch Murphy Brown. Those were very in the 90s. Oh, yeah. It was a silver chain.
Was it like the little almost like spike version of a rose quartz and it's hung in a little silver thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to have one of those and I would,
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
I've still, oh my God, this is all flashing back. I remember it fell off my necklace and it fell on the ground and it broke in two pieces.
You know what that is considered within people who work with crystals? I have friends who know far more about crystal work than I do. So this is just one small, aside and not necessarily the only way to interpret that. But I often would wear stone rings like hematite for different things, jade for different things, rose quartz for different things. And that when it eventually breaks, it means that you no longer need it.
Ooh, that's dark. Just based on my experience in middle school, that's really eerie. Interesting. Oh, thank you, Jesi. Okay. So next, of course, at the door is Jean. It's really implied that Jean is only there because Murphy threatened to have the flu and not be in next week's show. I'm feeling much better, Jean.
She's good.
So they all go into the living room. Unfortunately, John and Jean both want to sit in one of the black chairs, the same black chair. And there's a bit of a fight over it. Murphy, of course, says, hey, look over there. Another black chair that looks exactly the same. I don't want one of you take that chair. They won't budge. Finally, Murphy says, well, what, Jean, you sit in this chair and John, you can go over and sit in the other seat. She'll sit on the couch, which of course she realizes when she sits down means that she's sitting on a very small, tight couch with Carl. Oh my goodness. And I missed the best part. Murphy made a cake. That's where she sent Eldon.
Oh, did Murphy make a cake? Whew.
So out comes the cake that is extremely lopsided. Iced, but not the whole thing, as if she iced it and then put it inside the oven and it melted that. I don't know. Maybe she ran out of icing.
Considering all of the baking shows that I watch that make me an authority on baking,
yes,
that there was an imbalance in ingredients that made it collapse in such a way.
Murphy tries to get them to talk. She brings up the idea that she was born in the spring. May 1948, which is the first time we hear when Murphy was born. That, of course, is when Diane English was born. And through this whole conversation and the way that Murphy is trying to get them to talk, I decided that Murphy would be a really bad teacher.
Yeah.
I don't think that she would be good at teaching the youth of America and getting them to converse with each other. Then she tries to get them to bond over their kids. John has 2 kids. They're very close in age to Jean's kids. She goes, children, God bless them. And I wrote down, Murphy is so bad at fake acting.
Oh, God. She's so bad.
Oh, this is the great thing is she asked Eldon to serve the cake. Eldon says that he brought out the cake, but she doesn't pay him to serve it. His name isn't Babette. So Murphy tries to offer the cake. No one wants the cake. She's really trying here, but none of her tactics are working. So she offers the cake to Carl, who goes, Murphy, I may be in love, but I'm not insane. Which is like the first lucid thing that Carl has ever said around Murphy.
Carl's self-aware. Carl's really, I think, probably one of my favorite secondary characters. I heart him so much. He's so complex.
Yeah. And Murphy has had it. You know, what I love what she says is that they are playing with people's lives.
Yes.
Because they are. They're not just the lives of the people who are in the union, but their families and their kids. And when Murphy has it, you know, she has had it, that she is going to lock that door and no one is going to get out until every last crumb of that cake is gone. Because she sweat bullets over that thing. No mix, no microwave. I separated eggs. I pre-sorted. We're talking scratch, baby. So grab a pencil and grab a fork. We're not leaving until I'm ready to let you out. Have I made myself clear? And they go right into the cake.
Oh, do they? So we find ourselves at a newly restored FYI set. Everything seems a little brighter, a little more orderly. We're in the middle of broadcast. And we are finding out from Frank and Murphy's dialogue on broadcast that it sounds like the whistleblower story is turning out quite positively, which my current 2019 person wrote in my notes. Wonder what that feels like. And anyway, political comment aside, it appears that Mr. X has landed on his feet. Since last week, all 3 networks have entered a bidding war to turn his story into a TV movie. And by the way, please remind me, Lauren, because I feel like you know this. What are the 3 networks they're speaking of?
Yes. Wow. So all 3 networks at that time would be CBS, ABC, and NBC.
Okay, that's what I thought. But I didn't want to write that and then sound like a dumb child. So Jim turns to Murphy and says he hopes that Jill Eikenberry will play her in the TV movie. To which Murphy just makes us face. And we just want to say for the people that is a compliment.
Yes,
Jill
it is.
Eikenberry is a beautiful woman.
And would be a perfect Murphy. She's got the hair.
Truly, truly. Especially at that time, had the hair, had the look. Totally could have played Murphy Brown. I'm very intrigued by Murphy's face at being referred to as Jill Eikenberry.
Yeah, and for anyone who doesn't know who Jill Eikenberry is or was, she was a very famous television actress in the 80s and early 90s from LA Law.
I also knew her from Tracy Takes On HBO.
Oh, that's right. She did do that. But that would have been more like, what, late 90s, early 2000s?
Yeah, that's probably why I know her a little bit better from that. But yeah, LA Law was the big thing. And she was known for her, specifically her coupledom with Michael Tucker.
Yeah, so definitely look her up and you'll go, yeah, of course, she'd be a great Murphy.
Like oh, of course. And thus, Murphy, I think we talked about this. We don't think that Murphy wants to be considered comparable to anyone.
Yeah, pretty much, no.
Essentially. So they wrap the show and we hear a great congrats to everyone. Show number 1 of a new 3-year contract, to which Frank announces that he wants hazard pay for 3 more years of Vito. And Vito threatens to zoom in on that weasel on his head. And everyone's circling around the table where they had originally gotten the call in the very first episode in front of the broadcast desk. Miles is kind of in the middle of everything and does kind of his version of the thing that Frank does earlier to Dwayne and tries to kind of make a buddy joke to everyone, but particularly to Dwayne. He just wants to make sure there are no hard feelings, right, Dwayne? And punches him in the shoulder, to which Dwayne does not shift, and then does this really interesting, sweatshirt pinch. He playfully pinches his sweatshirt. I don't know what it is. It's Grant Shaud genius, but it is so just dude, stop. You got to stop. Jim comes around and announces that he wants to go to Phil to toast the mediator that they brought in to help mediate the 2 sides of the network and those striking. Murphy's response is, oh, sure, yeah, this guy comes in for 1 day and apparently he's getting all the credit. They know. She did so much. And then Dwayne does this great thing when he goes, you treatin' Miles? And Miles goes, you betcha. And Dwayne hooks him around the neck with his arm that is truly the size of his head.
Yes.
And just walks him out. So Murphy's on her way out, and she's with John, right? So she's on her way out. They're about to leave. They're the last 2 in the space, and all the lights go out. And Murphy turns, she's like, do you mind? We haven't even left yet. And John goes, electricians. They said if we got a better deal, they're walking out. And Murphy turns and loudly in the dim light says, well, she guesses she better go home and start making another cake. And magically the lights come back on to Murphy's classic, ha! And she walks out.
Yeah, finally, Murphy baking has a positive effect on people.
Who knew?
Something more than nausea or food poisoning.
We knew it needed its status as nuclear weaponry in negotiation.
Yes.
And that's the episode. We end on a positive note for Murphy's Baking.
Yay, which is all really what it's all about.
The true mediator.
That's it, right? So thank you for joining us for our strike episode, which I think is an interesting subject because, of course, a lot of Murphy Brown is Murphy Brown because of the writer's strike in 1988, as we've talked about in our first season of the show.
Yeah, this is kind of a new surprise favorite episode for me. So I'm really glad we got to talk about it. I'm glad we got to see the interesting relevancies that are still in play in an episode that I think I'd forgotten happened.
Yeah, and apparently Tyler Bowie as Dave does return. And also, Vito, the camera operator, is actually a real camera operator. And he is currently still working on the Connors.
That's so fun. I mean, go Vito.
And when we had Barnet on, he spoke about that he liked to use real camera operators on the FYI set. So that makes total sense.
You just see the difference.
Exactly.
So please let us know what you thought about this episode. Did this surprise you as much as it did us? And you can find us on social media. We are on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Murphy Brown Pod. Our website is murphybrownpod.com. And our email is murphybrownpod@gmail.com.
And if you want to give us a New Year's gift to help us continue with the podcast into 2020, any way to donate is on our website at murphybrownpod.com/donate. We cannot do this without the amazing patrons that we already have. Thank you so much, guys. We love you so much.
Agreed. This holiday season, we are very thankful for all of you. And for this lovely little community that we have going. And remember that if you join the Patreon, you can get a sticker from this very episode. And we'll see you soon
for another edition of FYI,
the Murphy Brown Podcast.